What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and we have another Coffee Talk Friday. So, another short episode. Today's topic is going to be a little bit about hunting. I didn't really write down any notes. This is based off a podcast that's going to be coming out. I was invited as a guest to someone's podcast who runs the Primitive Republic podcast. And he reached out to me because I did a response video to one of his things. He tagged me and I did a few responses talking about what basically his video was with HOW, which is a wildlife and hunting organization. How there's a weird stat that shows that 25% of Americans don't believe people should be able to hunt for their meat. However, it is like 4% of vegans and vegetarians believe that, or it's 2% of the population is vegan and vegetarian, and it's not 100% them. So most people who oppose hunting for meat, we're not talking trophy hunting, which is something we talk about at the end of that podcast, which most people don't know about. I'm going to talk about a little bit today. It's not talking about that. It's talking about literally people just trying to fill their freezers to feed their families. They're just going with wild game instead of cow, chicken, pork, lamb, etc. So I did a few responses talking about nutrition, talking about physical fitness, talking about a bunch of different aspects for the reasons we should be hunting. And, you know, the North American model of conservation is very, very good. And the way it's set up, the way the money that goes in is tagged so that it has to be used for conservation. It can't go into some like random general fund that it has to be used in ways related to habitat management, hiring biologists, paying for a game commission, paying for access, stuff like that. So it's like sometimes these organizations have excess money. It's like, great, this is the year we put in the wheelchair accessible boardwalk because we have all these excess funds. We're putting that stuff in. And hunters pay for a lot of that through the Pittman-Robertson Act. So anyways, before I'm getting ahead of myself into some of the more, it's not social political type stuff. Before I jump into that, I start off with the fitness side. And if you're a non-hunter, but you like getting outside, this applies to you. If you don't, well, you can still listen. And today's episode's for the hunter and the non-hunter. It's for someone who wants to understand better. And I recommend you do this. So I am huge on gun rights. If you don't see the bullet and stuff behind me, I don't know. I'm huge on gun rights. I'm huge on access to public land. I'm huge on hunting, obviously. But I think you should, even if you oppose the views, you should fully understand the other side. And that's one issue. A lot of times we have opposing views. For example, vegan versus carnivore. That's the extreme views on social media right now, which is why I'm using it. They're not willing to, everyone is willing to sit down and talk it out and understand the other side. It's just immediately like we dehumanize this person. So with hunting, it's like, oh, these are stupid rednecks. Like they're the lowest of the low. They're trailer trash. It's like, no, it's all walks of life. Or it's either trailer trash or rich man sport. Like the middle class doesn't do that. It's either you're trailer trash or you have a boatload of money and eat the rich. And really, it's like, it's everybody. Everybody can do it. Everybody has access to most hunting. Some of it's very expensive. I will say that. So the reason I say I'm saying this again, even if you don't hunt, even if you're slightly opposed, listen, understand it. And then I do this with my own views. If I oppose something, I listening to that side will either further my belief in said thing, or my views weren't as strong as I thought. And therefore, those challenges, I need to go back and rethink some of those. So I had a client for a long time. I worked one-on-one. I'm not going to say my political side or anything, but let's just say this client was on the complete other side of the political spectrum. Now, we agreed with a lot of things, but when it comes to politics, there are a lot of things we just did not agree on. The thing is, after years and years of talking with this person, and I always just play devil's advocate. So a lot of people I worked with thought I was on both, like, oh, Chris is left, Chris is right. No, nobody knows. And I'm not going to tell you guys. You can try to figure that out. So a lot of people, I would just play devil's advocate. I wouldn't say my opinion. I would just ask questions. And as I did that, I realized some of my beliefs were actual bullshit. Some of them weren't founded in any real stats. So it would make me go like, no, I don't believe that. Make me go and back up. So then if I had an argument with someone, I had research, I had data to back up that argument because I'm like, no, I don't. Let me go and actually look that up. For example, gun rights stuff. Or other things. I'm like, you know what? That actually makes sense. Actually, I agree with you there. So this other, okay, I see where you're coming from. I don't think that's how humans would act. I think that's, say, a ideal situation. I don't think humans or businesses would react that way naturally. But I like your idea. I just think it's unrealistic. But maybe we could steer people in that direction using other tactics that you're kind of going with, like the straightforward. So point being, if you're opposed to hunting, listen to the podcast. If you're a full-on hunter, well, you're going to agree with most of what I'm going to say. And not everyone's going to agree with everything. Realize that. These are some facts, but also some opinions. All right, we're already 6 minutes and 50 seconds in, so let's go. So I brought up with fitness. Hunting, you have to get outdoors. Like, yes, some people can go out on their back deck and hunt, but when we think of hunting, we're getting outside, we're going someplace kind of remote, even if it's just 150 feet or not feet, 150 yards off your back deck, you're getting out into nature. So there's a physical component to it. You have to get out there. You also have setup. We have to set stands up. You have to scout in the summer. You have to put your cameras out. You have, in general, there's work that needs to be done. And we live in society where a lot of times we're not getting enough physical activity. So hunting can help motivate people to get physical activity, exercise, without needing to go to the gym, without feeling like, oh, I have to go and work out. Like, I don't like working out. Well, this is a way to get people motivated. And we need some of these other factors. Not everybody likes going to the gym. It's a wild concept to the gym bros out there where, oh, just go lift weights. I did a reaction video to, like, it's like the 40-year-old women will do anything but lift weights. And I did a reaction like, some people just don't like lifting weights. We should instead, like, encourage people to do this stuff. And then down the road, they're going to realize, if I want to actually reach my goals, like actually get there, I will need to do at least some weight training. Like, let them figure that out on their own. So there's a physical component to it. There's a physical component once you're in season. For example, if you are doing any ground stalking, getting to glassing points, different stuff like that. Or even if it's just like pheasant hunt, like when we were pheasant hunting and chukar hunting a couple years ago, it was on the side of a hill. It was a Christmas tree farm, and we were walking up and down. We probably did like 2 miles up and down this hill, in snow, with gear on, with the shotgun. Like, it's weighted a little bit. It's not easy terrain. You're picking up your feet, so you're burning a ton of calories. And it can also be a sign when someone does that, like, oh, that's way harder than I remember. I need to actually do something. So in that aspect, that's good. It tells people, A, I need to do something, or B, hey, like, I'm getting work done. And if it's done on a regular basis, that can improve someone's overall health. In blue zones, we know that people are generally active. Unfortunately, America is not set up to be super, like, pedestrian friendly unless you're in a major urban area, in which case, different story. But suburb and urban areas generally not the most friendly for just walking around. So anything that gets us up and out and walking around, awesome. The next thing is we have data coming out of Japan showing that getting outdoors helps our mental health. And if you talk to any hunter who does not actually harvest anything, but they enjoy their time in the stand, they're like, I just like being out in nature. We have data showing that being outdoors in nature helps reduce stress, helps improve creativity, helps reduce ruminating negative thoughts, which is like the repeated negative thoughts, might help with depression, helps lower blood pressure aside from the physical activity. All these different things are really, really good. So all the like a lot of the negative stuff helps get removed. A lot of the positive things help get boosted by spending time, a couple hours in nature. So by doing that, great. So now we're helping someone's both mental and physical health by getting outdoors. Helps take their mind off of the stress of the day to day. I know when I get outside, one of the best things to do is just wildlife viewing. Like it's you're going through life and it's like you have taxes and you have bills, and hunting season's generally in the fall. Now we have obviously I'm doing this in March, so spring bear, spring turkey, trout season's coming up, so different story. But generally in the fall, it's like you have the holiday crunch, you have all these things coming up, end of year reports. If you're in the corporate world or you're running a small business, you're coming up to the end of the year, so you're trying to cram all that the last couple things in, or if you're trying to extend things, make sure that they're landing in the next year if you don't want to pay taxes in the first year. So with all that stuff going on, it's good to get outside and just be like, that fox doesn't give a fuck about a credit score. It doesn't have a mortgage. It doesn't care about the imaginary money with our electronic bank accounts. It's just out here living its best life. And it's good just to take a few moments to get that clarity, because that's what it does. It helps give you clarity. And then for me, at least, it's like, okay, here's what I need to do when I get back. Like if it's a morning hunt, when I get back, or okay, I'm going to write some notes down real quick on my phone. Monday, I have this awesome idea. I'm going to present that, or I'll message someone really quick if I have cell service. So that's one of those awesome things about it. So mental health, huge. When it comes to your nutrition, obviously being connected with food, I've talked about this many times in the past. I'm going to continue to talk about it because it's a huge thing. Most people are extremely disconnected with food. We can pick on the vegans here. Most vegans, not all, tend to come from an urban environment where they're not necessarily growing all their own food. They didn't grow up growing their food. They weren't in an ag. Most, not all, I have to say that asterisk because people don't like Nuance online anymore. So the disconnect with food is one reason I find some people have a negative relationship with food. It doesn't help them. People who connect with their food has a story. They look forward to certain things. I said this in the podcast I was on yesterday, which will be coming out soon. When we love ice cream, my wife makes homemade ice cream and it's fantastic. And it's a small little amount. Like you can't make the big like 1 gallon things at home with our ice cream maker. It's like like 2 Ben and Jerry sizes, maybe that size. Maybe it's like 1.5 of the Ben and Jerry type ice cream sizes. So we grow strawberries, we grow rhubarbs, or we'll get strawberries we grow rhubarb, plenty of it. But we'll get strawberries either out of our container garden or we'll get them from the farmer's market. And she'll make strawberry rhubarb ice cream. And she might make that once, she might make that twice. But we like to do things seasonally. And once that's gone, it's gone. It's something like now I'm looking forward to it. And there's this rhubarb rye cake that I make because rhubarb is one of those we call it a fruit, but it's a vegetable. And this cake is, oh, it's so good. So I'm looking forward to that because our rhubarb's coming up. It's not there yet, but I'm like, okay, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to harvest and I can do that thing. Are these healthy foods? Ice cream and cake. Nobody's going to label these healthy foods, but I have looked forward to that. Last year we had it. We have it like once a year. and then it's gone. And then I'm looking forward to the next time. But once it's gone, it's like I'm looking forward to the next thing. Peach seasons after that. And we have raspberries and blackberries. Black raspberries are one of my favorite fruits ever. That comes out right around 4th of July every year. So that's right after strawberry rhubarb season. It's black raspberry. And that's a very short, it's like 3 weeks generally, if that, that they're producing, and then they're gone. And you have to wait till next year. So you look forward, you celebrate those foods. Those foods have a story. So growing up, my mom would do blackberry cobblers, blackberry crisp, do cakes with it. And it was always right around 4th of July. That's when they all ripened up on our property. And we would pick a whole bunch of them and they would go bad super quick. So you had to use them up, and then they were gone. But I have stories as a kid, like I have all these memories. So same thing applies with hunting. Like when I harvest a deer, I usually write down when it was harvested, location, everything else. So when I pull that piece of meat out of the freezer, there's a story that goes along with it. Hey, this was the buck I harvested near, at the Chester County location, and it's pretty tender because it was a younger buck and it dropped pretty quick. This doe is a little bit gamier because it ran really far off. It was super fatty, so I'm sure that fat got all in the meat as we were butchering it and processing it. It's a little bit gamier, or this one was really like its stomach was filled with corn and still had corn in its mouth, so it tastes very close like beef. So there's all these stories like, hey, this one's like here's how it was harvested. Like I have these memories every time, and a lot of times my wife will ask me like, hey, which deer was this? It's like, oh, this was the one from rifle season, from archery season at this location. This was the one that, but dot dot dot. So there's a story that goes with it. You can actually say like where this one was harvested, what happened, how it was processed, what's the best way to cook this one. And it's a different thought process than good versus bad food. For example, right now we're seeing, well, it's been happening for a while. The spinach and kale is full of oxalates and stuff. So kale is bullshit. And this is bullshit. And I'm like, the Italian Tuscan kale has been around for hundreds of years. Like they've been eating it for a long time. I don't think it's bullshit. I don't think it is. All these different veggies, I don't think they're bullshit. I think moderation. I think we go a little overboard with it sometimes, where someone's like, okay, I'm having kale salad every single day because I heard it's a superfood. Like, yeah, maybe that's a little excessive. But a couple times a week is probably just fine, especially if we're trying to eat seasonally, which I do recommend because it tastes the best. And you get this reaction where, okay, it's only this time of year. For example, we grow kale in the spring. It's a spring and a fall crop. So we have kale growing right now. And then in summer, it'll bolt. We'll have to get rid of it generally. And then we'll grow it again in the fall. So during summer, there's no kale. Hunting season here in PA is the fall. So once we're out of venison, we're out until fall. And then we can restock our freezer and go from there. So as I was saying, there's a story with it and people need to reconnect them. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I do recommend, either if you're in an apartment or you don't have a big green thumb and you don't want to put a ton of money in it, like grow a few things in a pot. Like get some pot. You can go to Dollar General and find some pots. Now, if you're growing veggies and stuff, you're going to need some bigger pots. Like you don't get the little tiny like herb pots. Though the herb pots, if you just go with herbs, like grow some rosemary, grow some thyme, grow some basil. Like basil's fairly easy to grow. You could grow that and make pesto and do that with pasta. Easy to do. And it's like, hey, I grew this. And that's like this first step. I'm not saying this is going to magically change your relationship with food. What I am saying, though, is that's the first step to starting to connect. Because then it's like, well, what else could I grow? That's kind of what I did. Like I started with some containers and that grew. And then we got, here, and we started opening up a garden, and now we have a decent sized garden, and it just grew from that. I'm not saying you have to do it, but I am saying that doing a little bit, even if it's just 1 year, is a really good challenge to do. Like, okay, well, I'm just going to try to grow basil. I'll grow some lettuce, maybe a determinate tomato plant. I have a whole thing of like how to start gardening, but basically all you need is some decent quality soil and some pots, and you get your plants. Go from there. There you go. That's all you really need. Or maybe it's, if you have some land, maybe it's instead like, okay, we're gonna get some chickens, or I'm gonna take up hunting and I'm gonna harvest some of my meat that way. It's all ways of reconnecting with your food. And that can help build that relationship that's not the toxic black and white thinking of good versus bad, toxic versus non-toxic. There's a nuanced approach to it, and a lot of these foods, it's like it's we don't have to say it's toxic or anything. We don't have to view everything through the lens of calories and macros. Like, eat food, and then when really want to dial in our goals, then we can go into calories and macros. Or if we were going to include a good amount of processed foods, then we definitely need to do some calories and macro tracking, because those things are easy to overeat. But in general, we don't need to do that. We just need to kind of figure out what true portion sizes are and eat some real food, not go overboard, which is what a lot of people do. They go to the extremes. Like, we need to live somewhere in the happy middle. So that was how I was talking about reconnecting with our food, exercise. But then when it comes to the politics, and we talked about trophy hunting, and big thing right now in the news is Botswana. I think I said that country's name right. Once you said, well, we're going to send 20,000 elephants to Germany. And I was like, because they have over, I think it's 150,000. They're trampling crops, they're killing people, blah, 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 blah. And these other countries are trying to put bans on trophy hunting, so people can't go there and trophy hunt. And so they said, we'll send them. And then I go onto the comment sections of some of these, and people are like, I would love elephants in the backyard. I'm like, you watch too much Disney in your life. Like, you watch too much, and you're not actually connected with how messed up and how brutal nature can be. Like, those elephants will trample your house and kill you without second thought. You were just an inconvenience, and you were in the way, and they didn't like it. So those comments. So that was Botswana. So when it comes to conservation, I am not a trophy hunter, despite having some trophies behind me right now. Deer skulls. I hunt for meat first and trophy second. Now, generally, big antlers generally mean big body, which means lots of meat off of one animal. But I'm not interested in just shooting something for a trophy. Now, fortunately, and if you don't know this, here in America, there's a Waiton or Wanton wasting law. Basically, you must do your best to harvest as much of the edible parts of the animal as possible if you choose to harvest that animal. So you can't just go and take the antlers. And this is what the anti-hunting organizations will do. They'll say trophy hunters in their language. And that's how they come after hunting, is they come after trophy hunting. And if that's your education, which that stuff gets promoted because it's popular to be anti-hunting, but that stuff is pushed out. Trophy hunting, by definition, is illegal here in the States. You must do it, must take that meat and take it home. And pretty much every hunter I know eats that meat. There's a handful. There's always going to be some people who just are interested in antlers. There are. I know some of them. And their meat kind of gets freezer burnt, or I get it. Like, which is, as long as it's not going to waste, it's fine. Or people donate it. You can donate the food to homeless shelters. There's Hunters Helping the Hungry is an organization that takes the meat. It's free of charge. You just drop your deer off, gutted, and they take it and give it to homeless shelters. And that's a lot of the meat that is served at soup kitchens and stuff. A lot of the red meat. So when it comes to Africa, the way everything needs money. Let's just throw that. We don't work in pelts or gold anymore. Things in this world work by money. We can argue whether that's good or bad, but reality is, at this moment, unless something drastic happens tomorrow and we go back to gold coins, which is still money, we work in money. So to protect wildlife, rhinos, especially in Africa, where a lot of trophy hunting happens, rhinos, lions, elephants, etc., all those species that we all love and we like seeing, it takes money to protect them. And these aren't always like the most wealthy of nations. So we need to pay to keep this land open for preserves. We need to pay for security because there's plenty of people who will poach them and take ivory and the skins and other things and waste all the meat. And there's a lot of other things that go into it. So one thing that really helps pay for it, like obviously if you go over on an African safari, that might help pay for it. But the other way that pays for a lot of it is hunting. And people will act like they just pick random animals to hunt. And sometimes it is a little bit random, but a lot of times what these preserves do, because they want to help preserve the species. One, it's tourism. So if they just wipe them all out with hunting, there'd be no tourism money, which would also be bad. But they pick species or individuals in that species that good trophy value, but also are a detriment to the population sometimes. So a couple years ago, there's a rhino, and they put it up that this rhino needed to be removed because it was killing the young. It would, other young, it just wanted to breed, and that's how it was doing it. So they put it up that the rhino needed to be removed. They didn't care how. It could be hunted. It could be sent to a zoo. It could be sent to another preserve, but it had to be removed from this population. No animal rights organization stepped in. Nobody. One hunter paid $150,000 to hunt it, hunted it, harvested it, took the trophy home. That meat went to the local people, the local tribes, and they got to feast on a ton of meat that fed a lot of people, because that's how it works. So usually you don't get the meat that is sent over with the other people. So other people, that sounds actually really bad. It's sent to the Africans. They get it. So if you don't know that, and there's more that goes in, if you want to understand all of that, the Blood Origins podcast explains a lot more. So Blood Origins, I would recommend checking them out, as it's a really, really good podcast. Explains details better than I can. Has more knowledge because I believe the owner is from South Africa, so he knows African hunter much better. I know the basics. I'm not interested in Africa, but most of what I'm telling you, I've learned from him and some other hunters. But that's how trophy hunting works over in Africa. Some guy's going to pay a shit ton of money, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, etc., and going up. But these other countries want to put a ban because they just see, oh, these species are endangered. Nobody should be hunting them, not realizing that, okay, if someone's willing to drop $150,000 to hunt one, that's going to pay to have security that's going to stop poachers who might kill 2 dozen. That's going to pay to keep the preserve healthy, to make sure the habitat in the preserve can sustain these species, to expand the preserve so that there more animals can live there. Is it the happiest subject to talk about? Not necessarily. It is a messy, murky, nuanced discussion of here's reality. And again, the anti-hunters, sometimes they put these animals up, and the anti-hunting, the animal rights people, they don't raise the money. Some of them have the money, or they don't actually remove they're very much a hands off. So there's a view a lot of people have that it's either you've Disneyfied wildlife, like Bambi, which is where people think, for example, that buck and doe raise the fawns. It's like, no, just the doe does. The buck breeds the doe, and then after the rut's over, they go their separate ways. The bucks run together in bachelor groups, and the does stick together with the fawns, and that's how it goes. They don't raise them together, but people view animals in a human fashion when they're not humans. And the other view is this almost zoo-like type experience where people view nature as either like a petting zoo, almost like Yellowstone, and then the bison, not good, or it's to be viewed and not touched. And then when they're out of nature, they're like, well, humans are interfering, so humans are a disease and they need to be removed from the population. Which I'm like, where are they gonna go? What's the solution? Because you're just saying, well, humans are the problem. This was one of the things with the bear hunting in Jersey when they reinstated it, because it got so bad in just 1 year of, yeah, you didn't call the population back to maintenance level, so the population grew. They need to find food, so they started encroaching into human habitats because that's where the food is. What did you think was going to happen? So people were like, well, people need to move out of their habitat. Like, to where? Where are you going to put them? I haven't heard a solution other than, well, we should all go into high density housing in urban areas. Like, that sounds like hell to me. Like, I never want to. I'm in a townhome and I have yard, and this is too close to people. Like, I want actual land, and some people have issue with that, which I think is total bullshit. I will be very honest. Like, fuck you. If you think everyone should be in these high density houses, like, fuck off. If you want to live that way, great. I would have my wrecked mental health. It would be absolute shit. So I want a couple acres of land, and I want to be able to walk outside naked and not see my neighbors. Like, I could walk out naked, no issue. Not saying I'm going to do that, but I could do that. So, when we're talking about hunting, it's very nuanced, and the way here in America, so coming back to America, habitats managed for the ecosystem for all animals, not just game animals. Now, hunters a lot of times are just worried about game animals, but more and more people are worried more about habitat as a whole, because if you just try to grow habitat for, say, deer, well, that's great for the next, say, 5 or 10 years. And then all of a sudden, because the habitat has been skewed in this one extreme way, all of a sudden it starts to break down. So way things seem to be going is more of managing things for the ecosystem as a whole and improving the everything. And that all takes money. Removing invasives, buying land to preserve for public access. So, for example, here in Pennsylvania, a lot of your hunting dollars, the hunting license sales, will go to your state parks, some of your national parks. I think some of the money goes to, but then also your game lands, which outside of hunting season, like, anyone can go and walk and hike on. And some of them all year round. Like, there's hiking trails, running trails, bike trails. There can be here in Pennsylvania, there's no camping areas, but all this stuff, when hunting license sales go on, that money is allocated to some game commissioners, um, game wardens, biologists, but also giving you land you can go and hike on. Some people do have an issue with that. They think it should all be private, which again, I think is bullshit. There needs to be public land for people who can't afford it. Not everyone can afford land, especially in very expensive areas like I live in. So the Robertson-Pittman Act, basically every time hunting firearms and archery equipment are sold, there's a 10 to 11% tax, and that is ear tag. So that goes to funding, and it has to go to funding wildlife habitat management, etc. So it's based on two things: land mass, how much money states get, land mass, and hunting license sales. So this is where, like California, massive land mass, but they're making hunting harder and harder to do. They're putting more and more restrictions, so more and more people are going out of state to hunt. So you're like, well, they should get a ton of money because there's a ton. Not necessarily, because there's less and less hunters in California, like actually hunting in California. So they're going to other states, whereas PA has some of them, like the most hunters. I think the highest number of hunters is in Pennsylvania, of in the whole country. I think it's the most. I think it's like 3 million hunters. So not as big as California, but more hunters. So they get a good amount of money from that. And when it comes to the sticky, icky conversation of population management, for example, here in Pennsylvania, people understand deer hunting. They kind of understand some other hunting. But when it comes to bear or things people think are endangered, here in Pennsylvania, we have a very healthy population of black bear. And you need to remove about 25% of that population every hunting season to maintain the population. So I'll say that again. 25% of the black bear population needs to be harvested, rough estimate, to maintain the population. That's not growing, that's not shrinking, that is just maintaining. If you don't do that, then the population grows. That becomes an issue because there's then less and less food. And something I talked about on Monday's podcast was habitat carrying capacity. And if you start to exceed that, they're going to go into you're going to get more human animal interactions in a bad way, which means people randomly shooting these animals getting hit by cars, these animals just starving and not making through the winter, which is not a humane, fun way to go. And yes, nature will use that, but it could also, like that black bear meat could have gone and fed a family. So it is a sticky, icky conversation. I get it. I understand. But at the same time, it kind of is what it is. Like, no other arguments have been presented other than people are like, well, why don't we just relocate these bears? And it's where and who's going to fund it? Because currently what you have is hunters pay to get a tag, then go and harvest this animal. So if you relocate, now taxpayers will have to go and pay a lot of money, which the rate for success for hunting is like, for black bear in Pennsylvania, I think it's only 10%. Like out of all the tags sold, only 10% actually harvest. So you're going to pay for these people to go out multiple days and weeks or months to go out, tranquilize a bear. Then we have to pay for transportation to move that bear to where the population, that maybe they need more black bear, which is fine. But now you're going to put this bear into a new environment. It doesn't know where anything is. It's going to be super stressed. There might be different diseases there from other bears and animals that they don't have the immune system for. So it can be a really tough situation for that animal and expensive. Like how many years, how much money can you do to actually do that? So there hasn't been another thing where one, people actually are willing to spend money to do this thing, which goes to then improving things for everyone, like state park stuff. Um, and two, like what's the logistics? Like there hasn't been anything, and that's the people are like, I'm against it. Well, I haven't thought of how we would actually manage it. Humans should just move out of their habitat, and human beings have been part of their habitat for a long time. Native Americans. So right by me we have something called the Serpentine Barrens, and the one of these was a Native American hunting land, and they have documented that to maintain the grassland on there, the natives did controlled burns. We have evidence of Aboriginal people doing controlled burns in Australia to maintain grasslands. So people will be real quick to be like, humans need to be removed from the ecosystem. Humans managed the ecosystem for many, many hundreds, if not thousands of years. We were actually part of the ecosystem, doing controlled burns, manipulating things. I think of why the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest is the way it is because of humans. That's one theory out there of like, why are there all these trees that produce a ton of food? Well, humans were just, hey, like we'll plant these seeds here and then maybe it'll grow. And lo and behold, it grew. So that's one theory for that. But we have document of peoples doing controlled burns for grassland. So then there's land where these game species will come, eat, and then they could be hunted for food. So we can't just remove humans from the ecosystem because we've always been part of it. And you can't necessarily just input other predators because predators and prey go through boom and bust cycles. There's times where predators are going to boom and the prey is going to bust. Well, what happens then? They're going to go and search and try to find food. Well, unfortunately, when animals are starving, they get desperate, and humans all of a sudden look like food. So putting wolves in pretty populated Pennsylvania is not going to be very good. Like the suburbs of Philly and Pittsburgh, it's not going to be good to have wolves there. They will get shot, they will be removed, but they're also going to kill a lot of pets and potentially people. And the easiest targets would be kids. And that's really tough to say, but that's the reality of it. Like, we can't just like, hey, like there used to be mountain lion in Pennsylvania, let's just put mountain lion in. Like, this isn't California. This isn't with like those massive national parks. This isn't, Pennsylvania has some big areas, but not like out west that's undeveloped and preserved. It's a very different conversation. So these species all need to be managed, and people pay money to go and hunt them, doing the managing, which then that money is put back into the system. So then they can be paid to expand, create more access for everyone, improve the habitat. So even if you're like, I just like wildlife viewing, I don't think hunters should shoot that deer because I like looking at it. Well, there'll be better habitat. So there will be deer that replace that deer every single year. You don't need to worry. The hunters aren't going to kill them all off because only so many tags are allocated. It's not a random number. Like everybody gets a tag. Like there's a whole doe tag system here in Pennsylvania of only so many tags are sent out. And once they're gone, they're gone. Then it's poaching after that. And you get in a lot of trouble if you do that. Anyways, it is getting pretty late. So I am going to stop it here. Hopefully this was very educational. And if you need anything, obviously you're more than welcome to reach out to me, send me a message, follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And if you like the podcast, please, please, please leave a review really quick. Give a 5-star review. Takes 2 seconds to do, as that helps push the show out for more people to find it. Anyways, I will see you guys next week.